Good evening and welcome to this resumed ordinary meeting of Council. Before we begin, I'll call on Councillor Hoy to give the acknowledgement of country.
On behalf of all present and those watching on webcast, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands in which we meet, the Cammeraygal people, and to pay our respects to their ancestors and spirits past and present, and acknowledge their ongoing connections to land, water and country. Genocide and colonisation are processes that continue to this day. This is, was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillors, we've received requests from Councillors Carr, Spenceley and Welsh to attend this meeting remotely. Is there Councillor Berricky?
Mayor, I'm happy to move that Councillors Carr, Spenceley and Welsh are able to attend the meeting remotely.
So seconded by Councillor Santa. All those in favour? And that is carried. Welcome to Councillors Carr, Spenceley and Welsh. That brings us to confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of May 2026. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Santa, seconded by Councillor Berricky. Is there any discussion on the items? No, I'll put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried. Are there any disclosures of interest for any of the items on the agenda? Councillor Keane.
I have a disclosure of interest for 10.12 and it's a non-pecuniary, not significant. Thanks, Sharon.
Right. This meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website. Those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements. By attending the meeting, you are giving consent to your image and voice being webcast. Councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during meetings of council. Councillors who need to use their phone to text, talk or engage in social media activity must leave the chamber to do so. Councillor, that brings us to a procedural matter, which I will attend to before we come to the mayoral minutes. And that is a notice of rescission of the model code of meeting practice. As many of you would know, the Minister's model meeting code, which commenced on the 1st of January this year, was ultimately disallowed by the upper house on the motion of the Greens member and was successful. Accordingly, councils across the state must rescind the Minister's model meeting code, and that leaves us then with with our adopted code of meeting practice that existed prior to the 1st of January. Is there a mover for the rescission? Moved by Councillor Berricky, seconded by Councillor Santa. Is there any discussion? I'll put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried. So that brings us to the two mayoral minutes. The first is in relation yet again to Cammeray Park and the care and control of that land. As you all know, the history of Cammeray Park, North Sydney Council for decades has had care, control and management of that Crown land. The reserve is approximately 12.7 hectares and it is the single largest parcel of open space within the North Sydney local government area. As we all know, Transport for New South Wales have permanently resumed or mutilated the reserve, taking over 1.5 hectares of the site for construction of the Warringah Freeway upgrade. More to come with the finalisation of the Western Harbour Tunnel. We won't know the final ultimate loss of that public land until the Western Harbour Tunnel works are more complete. As we've had a lot of discussion, North Sydney is one of the 3 most densely populated local government areas in New South Wales. It is well documented that the North Sydney LGA has the lowest per capita provision of open space in the whole of Northern Sydney, and even less than that enjoyed by those who live in the city of Sydney. In this context, it bears repeating, every square metre of public open space is precious and even more critical to livability. The New South Wales government's housing targets of 5,900 new dwellings by 2029 combined with the low to mid-rise housing reforms, are set to increase our population by more than 30% over the next 5 to 10 years and place even further demand and pressure on existing open space. We are feeling those effects now before many of the newest round of apartments are even built. On Friday, the 6th of February, the Minister for Lands and Property, who also happens to be the Minister for Sport, one may think that was inherently a conflict, announced his intention to revoke Council's care, control and management of Cammeray Park and instead transfer that role to Golf New South Wales. There was no community consultation and the Council had a mere 14 days to respond to the proposal. It's interesting that the state member for the seat of Willoughby, who is also the patron of Cammeray Golf Club, Tim James MP, on at least met with the Minister. And on at least 5 separate occasions, the Minister met with Golf New South Wales. Yet the Minister did not meet with me or anyone at Council following at least 8 written requests to do so. Nevertheless, on the 9th of February, Council relevantly resolved to seek urgent legal advice from Senior Counsel, including whether the proposed revocation of Council as Crown Land Manager of Cammeray Park is legally valid in the circumstances and whether there is any basis to seek to restrain, prevent or challenge the proposed decision. And Council made a strong submission to the Minister seeking to be retained as the Crown Land Manager for the whole of Cammeray Reserve, including that portion occupied by Cammeray Golf Club. On the 5th of June, Minister for Crown Land Steve Camper MP announced that he had appointed Golf New South Wales as the Crown Land Manager of Cammeray Golf Course. The Minister's decision sets a very troubling precedent, appointing a single-purpose interest group with less than transparent governance arrangements as the Crown Land Manager without any community consultation. It seems this is the first in New South Wales, and one may hope it's the last. Moreover, the decision deprives the North Sydney community of the opportunity to plan for multi-purpose use of the land consistent with Crown Land Management principles and to support community demand and traditional informal access to the site. It doesn't appear to have in the published agenda my recommendations, which is one, that Council seek further is on the screen. Thank you. That Council seek further legal advice from Senior Counsel as to whether the revocation of Council as Crown Land Manager of Cammeray Park is legally valid in the circumstances and whether there is any basis to seek to restrain, prevent or challenge the proposed decision, and if so, commence proceedings to challenge the Minister's decision. 2, that Council retain item 0.21 in the 2026-2027 operational plan that states, quote, continue to advocate for consolidation, care and control to Council of all Crown land within Cammeray Park. And I commend the motion to you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Hoy.
I strongly support this mayoral minute. We are facing an unprecedented, unjustified and deeply troubling decision by the Minister for Crown Lands to strip North Sydney Council of its long-held care, control and management of Cammeray Park. For nearly 38 years, since November 1988, the Council has responsibly served as the trustee and Crown Land Manager for this important piece of community land. This site has already been depleted against the wishes of community, with Transport for New South Wales permanently resuming over 1.5 hectares for the Ringa 3 upgrade. We cannot afford to lose a single inch more of community oversight. Handing this land over to a single-use interest group flies in the face of what our changing community actually needs. The Minister's decision was made with absolutely zero community consultation. The community was shut out and Council was given a mere 14 days to respond to the initial proposal. This was by design. We know that this decision came after lobbying from Golf New South Wales. You have to look at the access given to special interests versus the community's elected representatives. Records show the Minister met with the patron of the Cammeray Golf Club and the member for Willoughby on this matter on at least 5 separate occasions with Golf New South Wales. Yet despite 8 written requests from our mayor, the Minister refused to meet with this council in relation to this matter. Appointing a single-purpose sporting body with less than transparent governance arrangements as Crown Land Manager sets a dangerous precedent for public land across New South Wales. We have already seen this kind of strategy used once before, when racetracks were handed over to Racing New South Wales. Racing New South Wales assumed the role of Crown Land Manager of 5 New South Wales racecourses in 2024. And just a few days ago, on 26th of June 2026, the New South Wales Government reappointed Racing New South Wales as Crown Land Manager of the Queanbeyan Racecourse Reserve. What will we see next under this expanding precedent? Greyhound tracks handed over to Greyhound Racing New South Wales to prop up their existence, even as the community turns against that harmful industry? It's only a matter of time under this government and this precedent. We must fight this, and the first part of this motion ensures we seek further urgent legal advice from senior counsel to determine if this revocation is legally valid and if there are grounds to challenge or restrain this decision in court. And the second part ensures we keep fighting for our community in our strategic planning by retaining item 02.1 in our 26-27 operational plan. We commit to continuously advocating for the consolidation, care and control of all Crown lands within Cammeray Park back to council. Our job is to protect the public interest, defend our local environment and ensure our community has a voice. The Minister's decision deprives North Sydney residents of the opportunity to plan for a fair, multi-purpose use of this land. I support the mayoral minute.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Holding.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, it's a long meeting, so I intend to be very brief. I really concur with Councillor Hoy and the Mayor's mayoral minute, and I really thank her for bringing that. For me, obviously, I agree with everything Councillor Hoy said. In particular, it's the precedent that this sets. It's really troubling, and I think it's really important that we do both of these particular recommendations: legal counsel and advocacy. So I support the motion.
Any other speakers?
Yes.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, the reason why this has occurred is because the Cammeray Golf Course was looking for certainty for their lease, which sounds familiar. So now we're in this situation. But I do put it out to our Labor councillors who this came out of nowhere. I would expect you to have that relationship with the Minister and not let us be blindsided by this.
Thank you, Councillor Keane. Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Keane, there was no uncertainty about the lease. Council had just extended it for 3 years. So I'm not quite sure where your uncertainty goes, and perhaps that's what's informed the Liberal member for Willoughby, who seems absolutely intent on denuding his constituents of more public open space. Nowhere in North Sydney do we have playing fields that are one purpose only, and it is astonishing that somewhere like a golf course, of which the member for Willoughby is patron of the golf club, lobbied the Minister for Crown Lands so that the lobby group for his golf club then becomes the Crown Land Manager of the golf club land on which it stands. It is very circular, and like the Mayor said, there is an inherent conflict there, I would have thought. And in this case, the Minister's decided that the golf club don't have to share their space. They've put up fencing. Only golf can be played there. Everyone else is kept out, and they have no accountability to the community in which they operate. It's a pity for the girls desperately wanting somewhere to play hockey. I guess they'll have to continue to travel out to Homebush or Ryde or somewhere miles and miles away to train. But if you play golf, you're on a good thing because you have your own exclusive space at Cammeray. But if you get bored of that small course in Cammeray, you don't have to go far. You can go to Northbridge Golf Course, a lovely 18-hole golf course where coincidentally, the member for Willoughby is also the patron of that golf club. Mayor, we have no choice but to seek legal advice. The precedent for this is dangerous. I concur with both you and with Councillor Hoy. This is a very, very dangerous precedent when a level of the state government seek to put Crown land management into a private interest and not into the community interest. I support the mayoral minute.
Thank you, Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'd like just to echo what many of my colleagues have suggested, and I won't take up an enormous amount of time. This is a ridiculous decision to apply a single-use body as the administrator over land. It is by no means a solution to maximising the use of our green space. This is not a debate on whether golf is currently the best use or highest purpose, but it is about maximising the space, and an independent body like council being the arbiter and the responsible party for that space is exactly the right place for that authority to live. I support the Merrill Minute. I thank you, Mayor, for raising this, and I believe we should invest required funds and seek as much legal advice as possible so that this type of precedent is not set for further councils and further bodies. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other speakers, I'll put the Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In principle, I think that the concept of preserving our green spaces and utilising them in a variety of ways is sound. I do not support the actions recommended. I am not very keen to have funds allocated to legal cases, taking it into court. So without, once we get the legal advice, by all means, the internal legal advice, I suggest it comes back to council before we decide to take any legal action. And so from that perspective, I'm not supporting the Merrill Minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I'll briefly reply to that last point. Council has a legal budget, and the purpose of that legal budget is for public interest litigation. So whether it's to defend council's planning controls on a merit appeal in the Land and Environment Court, or whether, more importantly, it's about standing up for the community on really important issues such as who is the manager of Crown land, of public land for a public purpose, that is the purpose of the legal budget. So there is no suggestion that what is proposed takes us anywhere beyond council's current capacity. And certainly when this council has engaged in fighting for its community with public purpose litigation, we have been successful. So whether it was the MLC building and state significant heritage listing, whether it was the Noakes and against the floating dry dock in Berries Bay, this council has a history of both standing up for a public purpose and winning. I hope that that's the case on Cammeray Park. For all those reasons, I commend the motion to you. All those in favour and those against, and that is carried. That brings us to the second Merrill Minute. Spofford Street, Cremorne. So, councillors, this matter has come before the council on many an occasion, and the hold up on pursuing works to address pedestrian and traffic safety, particularly in a growing congested precinct on a local government boundary, has been the inability of the two councils to work effectively together. So on the 13th of October 2025, council resolved that council note the multiple invitations over many years to Mosman Council to collaborate with North Sydney Council to address the black spot and other traffic and pedestrian safety issues at Spofford Street and Ranges Road. That council, as you all know, had been undertaking its own pedestrian and traffic works in order to address what we could on our side of the local government area boundary, and we resolved to once again seek the cooperation of Mosman Council in addressing those traffic issues. So again on the 9th of February 2026, there was a report based on that motion, and council staff and council relevantly resolved to note that collaboration will continue to be sought with Mosman Council regarding traffic and pedestrian safety on Spofford Street and Ranges Road, Cremorne. Well, on the 11th of May this year, Council CEO and Director of Open Space and Infrastructure and I met with Mosman Mayor Anne-Marie Kimber, the General Manager of Mosman and the Director of Environment and Planning, to discuss proposed works to improve pedestrian and traffic safety concerns on Spofford Street and to seek to work together collaboratively to further the project. The discussions were very cordial and fruitful. Indeed, on the 24th of June last week, Mosman Council's General Manager, Mr. Craig Kovich, wrote to Council to give in principle support subject to further consultation, detailed design and formal endorsement by Mosman Council to that project. Mr. Kovic noted, quote, "Our staff have already been in contact and are currently exchanging details about the proposals. In particular, Mosman Council notes its support for the proposed raised pedestrian crossing on Spofford Street in close proximity to Cabramatta Road and the proposed raised pedestrian crossing on Spofford Street just south of Holt Avenue. Mosman Council considers that further public consultation is essential and part of the normal process, and they would welcome broader community engagement on these matters, and they're open to undertaking that as a joint consultation with North Sydney Council. I won't read the rest of the letter, but I will say that persistence seems to pay off. We now have in principle support for a collaborative partnership. Mosman notes, as do pretty much most councils, that they don't have any funding for the works, but they want to do a joint funding application to Transport for New South Wales with North Sydney Council. I therefore recommend that Council acknowledge and thank Mosman Council for the proposed collaboration on pedestrian and traffic safety works on Spofford Street, Cremorne. That Council work with Mosman Council to pursue any grant or other funding available to deliver the proposed raised pedestrian crossing, subject to the outcome of community consultation and endorsement by both Mosman and North Sydney Council. Are there any speakers? Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly, this is good news indeed. We have worked on this for a very long time, and certainly as a new councillor in 2021, this was my first project. And so I'm very pleased that we have this this agreement for collaboration to work on this area that certainly needs to be upgraded. So thank you very much for the mayoral minute.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Keane.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, we all have been working on this for a very long time. Harrison Precinct in particular have been advocating for some level of pedestrian safety. On Spofford Street, we've seen multiple collisions for both cars or vehicles and pedestrians. So yes, I'm very supportive of this, and it's good to see the two councils working together.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Berry.
Yes, Mayor, like you, we have been working on this for a very, very, very long time, probably back to about 2012. And it is wonderful to see that we have Mosman Council at the table. I know funding will be the issue, but we take every step that we can take in a forward direction. And thank you to the council staff for pursuing this doggedly with Mosman Council. And it's really great that we are seemingly making some progress there.
I will put the item. All those in favour? Those against, and that is carried. So that takes us to now to the rest of the agenda. Normally we attempt some on Globo movement, but it seems to me that most of the agenda there will be an interest in speaking. If there are any items that councillors do not wish to speak on, perhaps you could indicate those now as I read through the agenda. 9.1 Access and Inclusion Committee minutes. Do you wish to speak? Okay. Traffic Committee minutes. No. Matters outstanding. Speak. Delivery program. Draft fees and charges, investment loans and borrowings. Okay, so we've got two items. Determination of the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal. Yep. Disability Inclusion Action Plan. Yep. Commercial and group use of open space. Yep. Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference. I think we have to move on that, as we have to make a decision as to who will be the delegates. Draft amendment to the North Sydney Local Infrastructure Contributions Plan. Any speakers? That's the three. Hume Street Park, of course, there will be speakers. The Coal Loaded Cafe activation. In which case it would be the recommendation. Small and Creative Grants 2026. North Sydney Olympic Pool Redevelopment Project update. and the motions, of course. So that would be a procedural motion that items 9.2, 10.4, 10.9, 10.11, 12 and 13 be moved on Globo. Move that, councillor Berrigan.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that way to move those items on Globo.
Seconded by councillor Holding. I put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried. That means that those items, the recommendations within the reports have been adopted. So that now takes us to item 9.1, the Access and Inclusion Committee minutes. Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I've sent a motion into governance. That's okay. So the Access and Inclusion Committee, what I'm moving is that the minutes be noted and that council note that the Access and Inclusion Committee visited the North Sydney Olympic Pool on the 16th of June and has provided feedback and recommendations to council staff regarding accessibility, operations and service delivery at the pool complex.
I think you wish to speak to the.
I want a seconder.
Oh, is there a seconded by councillor Holding?
Thank you, councillor Holding. I would like to speak to it. The Access and Inclusion Committee meeting was a very vibrant meeting, and there are a number of things that's discussed that I'd just like to highlight. The first was our first experience with Accessible New Year's Eve, which was held down at Milsons Point, and this was oversubscribed from the time that it was made available. What that involved is that a section of the foreshore down near the ferry wharf was cordoned off for those with access and disability issues who normally would not be able to come to the foreshore to watch the fireworks. And it was a fantastic success. It was offered at Barangaroo. It was also offered on the Carl Expressway and was offered at Pyramid Park around in Pyrmont. We received wonderful feedback for people that never thought that they'd be able to go down and see the fireworks and experience New Year's Eve on the harbour foreshore, given the difficulties that they have in accessing or going to those places, but also it was very mindful of some of the non-visible disabilities that people suffer from. When there were quiet spaces, there were places that they could just sit back from the crowd and where council staff and the providers helped them with access to and from Milsons Point Station, helped them with car drop-off, and the joy on people's faces, I'm told, was something to be seen, and council has committed to again offering it this year, this New Year's Eve. The Access and Inclusion Committee did provide quite a bit of feedback on how to improve it. Everything is a continuous improvement process. But I think that it is a wonderful thing for North Sydney to be offering such an opportunity. We're looking at ways that we can increase the numbers, and also we did have it ticketed at nothing, but maybe we did have a few dropouts on the evening. So whether we have a nominal fee, that's all things that the Access and Inclusion Committee are considering, and we will consider that at the next meeting. The other issue was that the committee met prior to the SRV decision. And the issue, of course, as everyone is very aware of council's financial position, that many things that are not only nice to have, but actually need to have. And one thing that has been put on the back burner whilst funding has been unavailable, where we can't just fund things that we should be doing, but we're really funding emergency funding by shifting money from one emergency to a bigger, greater emergency, is that accessibility has not been a focus. So I think the committee acknowledge that council can't do everything at the same time, but they would like some accessibility infrastructure to be implemented. They have highlighted that in their in the minutes, and I see that has been taken on. So that's terrific. The other issue that we discussed was the DAP, and that is a separate item on the agenda, and so I will talk to it at that time.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? That is carried. That brings us to item 10.1, matters outstanding. Is there a mover? Moved by councillor Berrigan, seconded by councillor Holding.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a motion that I've sent in. noting that we now have the funding that has been allocated for the seating at Hayes Street Wharf. That the matters outstanding is that we received the note, and that we also acknowledge that in response to the motion, that should council be successful with its SRV, which it has been, that we consider the budget, and that has now been included in the budget, and that asking that the usual engagement processes be followed, including a site visit by the Access and Inclusion Committee, so that we can actually involve the Access and Inclusion Committee at the inception and the concept stage, rather than retrofit something which has already gone through a process. So this is one of the very first opportunities to have a look at a clean brief for the Access and Inclusion Committee, have them down there, and that is really important in the context of many of the users of that space down at the bottom of Hayes Street, given that we are near the aged care facility, and it is a lovely space where people pick up elderly and other people to sit by the wharf. And I'm sure that the Access and Inclusion Committee will have plenty of ideas that are not just good for access and inclusion, but are good for community.
Councillor Holding, you take on the additions for, thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the item, all those in favour? And that is carried. That brings us to 10.2, the delivery program and operational plan, the budget 26, moved by Councillor Beregi, seconded by Councillor Santa. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Beregi?
Just briefly, wow, thank you. Thanks to the council staff for the reports and the budgets. This was a huge undertaking. It is terrific that council, nobody wants to put rates up. Everybody knows costs of living are hurting people. But when that happens, people are turning more and more to council to provide what they view as free services, and actually nothing is free. The impact of cost of living means people are spending more time at home and spending more time in our parks and using the facilities provided by the council, which includes libraries, which includes community centres, and community groups and volunteer services. So thank you to the council staff for a terrific application to IPART. I acknowledge IPART's decision and look forward to seeing some new bus stops fairly soon.
Councillor Hoy.
On the 2nd of June 2026, IPART approved our special variation application in full. I echo all of those comments. It's a massive milestone that shifts council away from reactive crisis management towards responsible long-term stewardship. That approval means we're able to adopt scenario 2, which we had exhibited, as we will now have an enhanced funding pathway required to secure our long-term financial viability and start chipping away at the structural backlogs we've been nursing for so long. This approval is so important to ensure the council is able to absorb shocks and keep progressing strategically. As this report notes, council often has to absorb unexpected costs outside of council's control. In this instance, it was an 11% increase in the emergency services levy, well above the budgeted 2.7%. The additional revenue generated through the special variation will support council's long-term financial sustainability, maintain existing service levels, increase investment in infrastructure renewal, and enable planning for the future infrastructure and service needs of the growing community through the Stronger North Sydney program. Under this plan, we're meeting the crucial benchmark of investing 100% of asset depreciation back into infrastructure renewals. This operational plan and budget does not simply rely on rate increases. It is embedded with strict internal cost containment. Despite recent updates indicating annual inflation of 4.6%, council has retained the materials and services cost assumptions included in the draft budget. Materials and services expenditure, excluding public presentation, will increase by only 2.7%. Public presentation costs will increase by 3.7%, and domestic waste expenditure will increase by 5%. This approach reflects council's commitment to cost containment, cost control, and the implementation of productivity and efficiency improvements. Our productivity and improvement plan is projected to deliver $66 million in savings and cost containment over the next 10 years. Efficiency reforms are yielding over 35,000 hours of staff capacity per year, climbing to 50,000 hours from 26-27 onwards, which will be reinvested directly into improving customer service and community outcomes. This is a good report and a good outcome, and I support it. I also particularly note and welcome the funding allocation to furniture renewals at Hayes Street Wharf, as was already noted. However, I will be moving one amendment, possible. in response to the community feedback, the amendment would add subject to amending the delivery program commitment 1.2 to read 1.2 progress to the design and delivery of the Hume Street Park expansion project, including options for both the retention and removal of Kelly's Place Childcare Centre, the closure of part of Hume Street and improvements to the quality of open space in Hume Street Park.
That's an amendment. Is there a seconder to the amendment? Seconded by councillor Spenceley. To speak to your amendment.
Yes, briefly, just I will have more to say about this later, but of the 64 submissions received during the public exhibition, 37 of them explicitly opposed the removal of Kelly's Place. Members of the community have made it clear that this not-for-profit centre is vital social infrastructure. It's important that we don't excessively restrict our decisions when it comes to the design for Hume Street Park. I believe it may be a result of this development plan commitment that has resulted in there being no apparent plan to permit designs that would enable retention as part of the current community consultation on the designs for the park. I hope this amendment will give council the flexibility to design the best possible outcome for the community without restriction or predetermination. We deserve to have all of the options and designs on the table in front of us before we proceed.
Are there, councillor Keane?
Can I just see the motion again, please?
It's an amendment.
Yep, can I just see it again? Thank you. You said there retention and removal.
Yeah. Both.
Okay, I'm going to talk to a couple of points for this item. Firstly, I'm going to talk to the community consultation, the same as you, councillor Hoy, and it was 37 submissions expressing concern about the loss of Kelly's potential loss of Kelly's Place, with the main concern about loss of childcare places and seeking retention and or relocation for the service. So that was one of the main feedback from the plan. The other piece is the SRV. I'm sorry, we are so disappointed to have such a massive rate rise. It was just too big. I think it's really unfair on our residents of North Sydney in a cost of living crisis to be facing this spike in increase. So I'm very disappointed. In terms of the amendment that's just been put to us, I can't support it because it's attached to the rates. I will wait to support the motion, the recommendation on 10.10 when that comes to the agenda. But unfortunately, you're tying Kelly's Place into the rates decision, and I don't believe that is a good solution.
Are there any other speakers? Before I give the mover the right of reply, there is a speaker. I can't see any hands. No.
Sorry, is there a seconder for the amendment?
Yes, is there? Yes, it was councillor Spenceley.
I didn't see it on the
And it was there. I'm going to briefly speak against the amendment. I understand that there were 56 submissions, but the reality is that this open space, which is really inadequate, even with stage 2 of Hume Street Park, will merely add 2,000 square metres to the most dense suburb in North Sydney. It has long been planned and been subject to much wider and broader community consultation that supported the demolition of the building in the park in order to maximise open space. And for those reasons, I will be voting against the amendment. Do you wish to have a right of reply? I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? And those against? And the amendment is lost. That brings us back to the originating motion. Are there any further speakers on the motion? Councillor Holding.
Oh, thanks, Mayor. Just briefly, obviously we've talked about, well, Councillor Hoy and Verrier talked about the sort of the grand scheme of things and the financial aspects of it. I did just want to congratulate the staff. They did a terrific job on this report and all the operational planning that's gone about this. It's been a huge workload. It's taken a lot of time, and I congratulate all of them in doing such a fantastic job with it, of having different options for different outcomes and solutions. It's been very clear as a councillor to be able to see the different pathways that were available, and so I thank them and commend them for their work on the report.
Before I give the mover the final right of reply, I'm going to speak briefly to this. We inherited a financial position as a council that was a legacy of ad hoc decision-making and populism. The inherited North Sydney Olympic Pool project, which was always a $100 million project plus at $122 million, has meant the biggest opportunity costs in relation to council's capacity to maintain and renew its infrastructure. Internal reserves were denuded for that project, and that's resulted in the $157 million backlog in asset renewal that this council faces. This council, I'm proud to say, in majority have been dedicated to financial repair, and we, as others have spoken, are very fortunate to have an exceptional leadership at the elected level, particularly around the finances. Council's Director of Finance, Council's Director of Corporate Services, Council's Executive Manager of Operational Performance and the CEO have driven the work that stands behind the decision that IPART ultimately made. They have certainly been the subject of enormous praise from Council's Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. And that work, as it stands, particularly around productivity and improvement, is something that I know from having recently been at the Australian Local Government Association conference, other councils are holding up as best practice. This is, as Councillor Hoy said, a milestone. It's a milestone because the minimum rate will now not be the second lowest in Greater Sydney. It will be in the middle of the pack. And that's really important in the scheme, that 80% of residents pay the minimum rate, and that will increase over the coming 5 to 10 years because of the increasing density that is being delivered into our community. So what this means is that we are now not only able to start to tackle the asset renewal backlog, but we are also doing some planning for that new population because there are some funds for that. This council has taken a very careful, strategic and consulted approach so that we, with this decision, can leave this community better than we have found it. So for all those reasons, I support the motion. Councillor Beregi, do you wish to reply?
I will. Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, as you alluded to, yes, we did inherit this financial crisis and it has cost the council dearly in terms of pressure on council staff who have been operating at less than optimal levels. I think over 40 positions have been held vacant, and yet the council staff produced amazing documents which, like the Mayor said, at the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee have commended the council staff for such excellent work. The most important structural change was the minimum rate, where almost 80% of our residents were paying of households were paying $750 a year. And taking into account that Local Government New South Wales recently released data that said that $500 per household was cost shifted to councils, which really meant that of nearly 80% of households, all they paid in rates to support the local area was $250 a year. That's structural change, and this is not going to change everything. This is not now time to start throwing money around. This is really just getting council back to some sense of not a great word, normality, where we can actually start to make inroads into the $150 million of asset renewals, many of which may now be replacements because we've had to leave them for so long. And I think the irony of Councillor Keane not supporting the SRV, given that we have just resolved to install furniture at Hay Street, which she voted against, and then she voted against the SRV, but is now wanting to spend money that she voted against for a reason that she voted against. It is internally inconsistent. And these are really difficult decisions, not necessarily popular, But what happened was that council was able to state its case, like Councillor Hoy said. There was compelling evidence, and thankfully IPART agreed. So it's I'm really pleased that the council, that the CEO will now be able to fill some of those vacancies to take the pressure off the council staff, and we can start really, instead of just going hand to mouth and moving money around like deck chairs on the Titanic, we can actually start progressing and moving forward.
Put the item, all those in favour? And those against? And that is carried. That brings us to 10.3, the draft fees and charges. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Berge, seconded by Councillor Santa. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, I'll hold the right of reply. Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any speakers? Okay, I'll put the draft fees and charges. All those in favour? And those against? And that is carried. So that brings us to 10.5, the 2026 determination of local government remuneration tribunal. Is there a mover?
I move an amendment.
Well, we have to have a motion before you can move an
Yep.
amendment. Would you like to move a motion?
I'd like to move an amendment to the motion.
There isn't a motion yet.
I'll move the motion.
Moved by Councillor Berge, seconded
I'll
by
second.
seconded by Councillor Welsh. Councillor Keane, you have an amendment.
Thank you. I'd like to move that council keep the current remuneration as is.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded
it
by
static.
Councillor Carr.
Yeah.
You can speak to your motion, your
So the
amendment.
wording would be to keep the councillor remuneration and mayoral on hold as it is. I'll reserve my right of reply.
Does anyone wish to speak to the amendment, against the amendment, or for the amendment? Councillor Berge.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll speak against the amendment. I'm respectfully, $30,000 is not a lot for the time, effort and work that I put in. If you feel that you don't want to have your fee go up, Councillor Keane, you're more than welcome to ask me to amend the motion that you are paid at the other rate. And I think it's fair and reasonable in accordance with the policy that what is the recommendation is adopted by the council.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers for or against the amendment? Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just think at this time it's actually the optics of increasing your own remuneration. So I just felt it was actually a good message to our residents who are facing a rate rise that, you know what, maybe we'll put our own remuneration on hold.
Thank you. I'll put the amendment. All those, Councillor Carr.
Yes, I would like to unmute.
You're not on mute. If you would just continue. Oh, you are now. You've muted yourself.
Okay. Yes. I would like to echo Councillor Keane's comment previously about councillor fees. I do sympathise with the fact that, yes, our salaries based on the amount of work that we do is reasonably low. However, I don't think this is the time to increase our salaries. And so I would support Councillor Keane on that.
Thank you. I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour? And those against? And that is lost. That takes us to the original motion. Are there any speakers on the original motion?
I would actually
No.
like to move an amendment to the original motion, if I might. Yeah.
If you put the amendment, and we'll see if it is one.
The amendment that council amend the councillor expenses and facilities policy, and that council fix the annual councillor fees in line with the minimum, which is listed in the table there, and that council fix the annual fee for the mayoral fee to the minimum in accordance with metropolitan medium councils.
Is there a seconder for the
Sure.
amendment? Seconded by Councillor Keane. Councillor Spencerley.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, echoing the sentiment from the last amendment, but I think this is more of a statement to the community. At a time where we have just been successful in increasing rates by upwards of 50 to 60%, depending on the category, it is now an optical time to demonstrate that we are in line with the community. We are not taking those funds and applying them to ourselves. That we recognise that the financial management of the council to date has been difficult, and we are willing as a group to set the example for the community. The most important part of this is that this is a $2 million decision over the period that was included in the SRV. So we are effectively, by taking the maximum, taking $2 million of the rate increase, the fees that we are taking from the community, and then applying that to ourselves. So I believe right now, while the council has just increased rates, it is the time for us to actually set an example and take the minimum fee.
Thank you. Any speakers against the amendment? Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wonder if now is not the time when we do get this rate increase, when would there be a time?
Thank you. Any other speakers? I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Those against? And that is lost. That takes us to the original motion. Are there any further speakers? I'll put the motion. Oh, Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I note that I realise the financial difficulties that everyone is undertaking at this time with the state of the economy. And this may be the maximum amount, but the amount is 3.7% increase compared with the CPI increase up to now of 4.1%. So in other words, lower than the rate of inflation. I also look at the hours that I put into this with willingly, and I love what I'm doing. But if I were to get the minimum wage for the number of hours that I put in, I estimate that I'll be receiving at least twice the remuneration that we currently receive. And I also look at our colleagues in federal and state parliament and the remuneration that they receive for the work that they do. And I have a look at the remuneration paid to a state parliament backbencher. Alongside their salary and allowances, they get close to $250,000 a year, plus they have 3 staff, plus they have an office and a car, none of which we receive. And I'm always open to those councillors who believe that this is too much. They can always reject that payment if they wish. I therefore support this motion.
Thank you. So any further debate? Councillor Holding.
Just briefly, Mayor, thanks. Look, this comes up every year and the same people say the same things. I do concur with what other councillors have said. If there are councillors on this council that feel that they're paid too much and they don't want the money, then they're more than welcome to refuse it and return it back to the council. For my part, I mean, I think the rise is, we've been talking about percentage, it's about $600 all up. And we work weekends, we do a lot of reading, we attend conferences, and we have information and briefings, and I know that takes up a fair bit of my time, and in terms of travel backwards and forth, I don't feel that what and again, this has been actually forwarded by an independent body about the level of the raise. So with all of that taken into consideration, I don't really have a problem with it, and I support the motion.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Do you wish to write a reply? I'll put the item. All those in favour?
Sorry.
And those against? And that is carried. That now brings us to item 10.6, the Disability Inclusion Action Plan. Is there a move by Councillor Beregi? Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, before speaking about the plan, I'd really like to thank the council staff for putting the plan together. Rather than going out to a consultant, it was done in-house. by our Access and Inclusion Coordinator, supported by the Acting Director of Planning and Environment, and also by the Executive Manager, and I've forgotten her title, Emma Fitzroy, Operational Performance, who have worked cohesively together with the Access and Inclusion Committee to develop what is a really fabulous plan. It is easy to read, it is positive, and it really, when reading it, reflects the feeling of the Access and Inclusion Committee in our meetings. I welcomed the feedback from the community, which I found really helpful, like all feedback. And one of the comments was about, and I'll just quickly turn to it, was why haven't we included a case study in there? Because the submitters, and she acknowledges that I don't know her name, daughter has benefited so much by the accessibility at Primrose Park that she's been able to attend. And her feedback has been wonderful in terms of the language and the description that is adopted in the plan. I would encourage everybody, if you haven't already read it, to read the Access and Inclusion Plan. There are some really fantastic actions, and now with the SRV having been secured, we're able to deliver on them, and we are already delivering, which is just at a pace even that the committee are really pleased about. And some of the outcomes and deliverables aren't that expensive. It just requires a bit of time and a bit of careful consideration. But the best part is that the Access and Inclusion Committee are now at the forefront of decision making, and like will be with the Hayes Street furniture, that they will be there from the outset. So we are designing fully inclusive infrastructure, not providing infrastructure and then retrofitting it. So thank you again, if it could be passed on, CEO, to the council staff for their careful consideration of the Disability Inclusion Action Plan, and I look forward to delivering on it over the next couple of years.
Are there any other speakers? I'm going to speak very, very briefly on this. I'm just really pleased that we're now at a second Disability Inclusion Action Plan, and that many of the actions from the first have actually been implemented. It is even more pleasing that there is funding for actions under this plan that we're about to adopt. And the thrill of that is that this organisation is being transformed, reflecting our community's needs, so that inclusion and accessibility is at the heart of the operations of council, whatever it is that council's doing. So I support Councillor Berrigi's motion, but also her praise of the authors of the plan, all of the many authors, both Community Access and Inclusion Committee members and council staff. So I commend the motion. If there aren't any other speakers, I'll put the item. All those in favour? And those against? And that is carried. So that takes us to 10.7, commercial and group use of open space fees and charges, post-exhibition report. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Berrigi, seconded by Councillor Santa. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Berrigi?
Just briefly, Mayor, thank you to the council staff for this report. It is very well supported in the community, and I think one of the submissions that we received recently showed a picnic in Blues Point Road, in Blues Point Reserve, replete with an animal farm and donkey rides. I think it is not the council that is wanting to do this. It has actually come from the community, where the over commercialisation and group use and the use of the parks in times where we are losing public open space needs to be managed. And I do thank the council staff for their report, and policies and processes are always up for debate, but we have to start somewhere, and I think this is an excellent starting point.
Any other speakers? Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I too support the motion. This brings us into line with all other councils. I can give a personal example of a function that I attended at Centennial Park, where the fees were greatly in excess of the fees that are proposed here in this schedule. So we're all in line. We're not at the highest level. We're not at the lowest. We're at the good median level. And I think that while we have some of the most beautiful harbourside locations, we have attracted greater use of our scarce parkland by commercial operators, wedding and other ceremonies, and it's resulting in increased strain on our clean up and make our staff having to clean up and make good afterwards. We therefore need to bring us into line with other councils. This revised schedule will not, as claimed by one state member of Parliament, mean that families hosting a private party will now have to pay up if more than 20 guests turn up to their private function. It's designed to ensure that events, meeting operators taking commercial advantage of our unique harbourside locations contribute to the cost of the use of that facility. Other parks pay a fair share of the cost of cleaning up, and for denial of that space of the community is a cost to us. The recommendations here show that the council has reasonably taken into account the feedback it has received from the community, and that if implemented, they will ensure a fair compromise between commercial private use of our scarce and beautiful parklands. I support the motion.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you. I want to bring to the attention that there were 83 submissions to this paper, and there's a strong, consistent theme that informal community use should remain, that residents should not be discouraged from walks, picnics, informal recreation and family gatherings, and there was opposition to the fees around affordability, and that public parks are a shared asset. And they also were concerned about impact on a small business, which could create barriers. And we heard from a number of residents tonight and business owners who have some very clear concerns about some of the fees that are about to be charged.
Thank you. You could turn off microphone. Councillor Holding.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, we really have to clarify this is about commercial and group use of open space fees. If you're walking your dog or you're turning up there on your own, you're fine. If I decide to go for a walk or provide a picnic with 20 of my closest friends or family in any of our parks in North Sydney, it's totally free in every park. It always has been and it remains that way. If I'm operating a business or I want to reserve a specific space for a celebration and I have more than 21 people, let's say 59 of my closest friends, that's the equivalent of 2 full classrooms of kids, then there will be a small charge for the inconvenience to other park users and the wear and tear the group's intensive use of the park might create. The grass, the litter bins, the public toilets. These changes work because it helps compensate casual park users by both organising and limiting the time of commercial operations or large groups, while simultaneously funding the extra activity of the heaviest users in a public space. This helps reduce the financial burden of a large celebration or business on our ratepayers, who might otherwise have to contribute towards the venue for my wonderful party. The fees or charges reserve the space, so no arguments or fisticuffs over who got there first, and it keeps the event in a designated place while ensuring guests are mindful of the impact of their presence. In terms of security, it keeps large groups accountable to our rangers, who will have a copy of any bookings. So if I decided to surprise my wife with a Meet the Kardashians style party, or what council staff are terming a high impact commitment ceremony, flowers, chairs, dining and a celebrant to host our 60 guests, in a category 1 park like Blues Point Reserve, it's $800 for 3 hours. A category 2 park like Cremorne Point, it's $520, and a category 3 location like Primrose Park, it's $240 for 3 hours. If I were to do the same at Balmoral on their rotunda, the fee charge for a comparable site by our neighbouring council is well over $1,000. Most nearby councils already charge fees, particularly for commercial use of their public spaces. I really can't think of anything fairer. This was demonstrated very graphically, previously mentioned by Councillor Berrigan, when a resident who lives near Blues Point Reserve sent all councillors this week photos of a commercial picnic party. This included more than 30 seats, a banquet table and a small petting zoo, which included an alpaca and a sheep. But the cherry on the cake were the pony rides along the foreshore. And this is not out of the ordinary at our more iconic parks. Currently, there is no charge for that type of commercial operation, but tonight, hopefully we change that and bring fairness back for all park users. This public consultation and community engagement is what we do on every single policy and plan. So far from being a delay or a watering down of the fees and charges policy, we put out our thoughts and listened to the feedback and made a number of small amendments reflecting those comments. That is just good government. That's how it's supposed to work. And it would be wonderful if the state government, and particularly our state members, could remember this approach from time to time. I support the motion.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Carr and then Councillor Spenceley. You're on, Councillor Carr, you're on mute. If you could unmute, please.
Okay.
It looks as, thank you, we can hear
Thank you,
you.
Madam Mayor. In general, I'm supportive of the fees proposed. As a couple of councillors already mentioned, I think it's only fair that we do have some fees for the use of our open space. We did hear though from a couple of small businesses in the public forum, and I'm wondering whether it would be possible to go back and look at the charges, see if there could be an adjustment to support small businesses. We obviously don't want to see the kinds of activities that we have seen in Blues Point Park by any means, but I think perhaps some adjustment to the fees might be useful for small businesses.
Thank you.
I have
Councillor
an amendment, Mayor.
Spenceley. Yes.
Thank you. It's a brief amendment, point 9, so keeping the existing 8 points, and the council continues to engage with small and mid-sized operators of outdoor activities in council facilities to ensure that the policy and pricing that council has developed does not impact their business, does not reduce the ability of residents to use the park via commercial services, and does not price using our facilities out of the market regarding other council and other outdoor areas.
Are the movers prepared to take that on?
No.
No. Councillor Carr, do you wish to second that amendment?
Yes, please.
Okay. Councillor Spenceley, if you speak to it.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, as with an issue as complex as this, and first of all, make the point that do support usage-based charges for all of the reasons that all of the other councillors have maintained. The reality of it is there are unintended consequences of any desired charging or move from free use to charging. In today's modern society, a lot of people use outdoor facilities via commercial activities. That is their motivation, that is their desire. We don't want to impact the cost of that. We don't want to reduce people's use of that via unintended consequences, via pricing that will invariably always be passed through to the consumer. So while we want to place fees onto the operators, we don't want those fees to flow through to our residents, to people using the parks and facilities who do require, and I think we all do require motivation to do outdoor activities. I would hate for us to be in the position where weddings don't happen in our beautiful LGA, in the LGA, in the parks and outdoor areas closest to where people live, because of a cost reason or because an operator failed to be able to sustain their business in our LGA and moved elsewhere. So I think this is a pretty simple amendment, one that we should be supporting to ensure that there is no negative impacts that we haven't foreseen. We have heard from many speakers tonight that there is impact to businesses. I think we should continue as a local governing body, continue to engage with those operators and continue to look for opportunities to adapt the pricing and proposals and then bring that back to council if there is desired change in the future. It just keeps our options open. It doesn't require any change to the fees currently, but it does mean that we listen to and take feedback of the impact our changes have made, and we can look at potential changes if they're required. So hopefully you can support this and we won't have unintended consequences of people using outdoor space less in an environment and in a society where we should be encouraging exercise in outdoor facilities use as much as possible.
Any other speakers? I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? And those against? And that is lost. Are there any further speakers on the substantive motion? Could I ask the movers whether they would take on?
Councillor.
Oh, Councillor Hoy, sorry.
Yes, sorry. I did just want to briefly, I was having a listen to people's contributions and remembering some of the comments made in the community forum, and I did just want to briefly endorse the comments of the fellow councillors and also those of Mr. Bracker when it came to some of these comments in the community forum earlier. I think the quote was the private schools squealing when being asked to pay their fair share. And so I did briefly just had a bit of a look at what the tax breaks they are currently receiving from the state government and the unfairness of their unwillingness to pay in this regard. In this year's state budget, the private schools have been awarded a tax break of $532 million this financial year in avoided payroll tax, and a further $62 million in this financial year in avoided land tax. So I think it is only right that they pay these nominal amounts proposed by council.
Thank you. If there are no other speakers before I give the right of reply to the mover, I'll speak very briefly. This is another, this policy, as many of you will recall, came originally from a mayoral minute that I proposed about the impacts, particularly of private schools and their operations, not their casual use on council parks. But it also comes out of the density that we currently have and the density that we're planning for and the demand for the use of open space. And really this policy is about council's capacity to manage multiple users and the impacts, particularly of commercial use on public land, including that of the private schools. I, like Councillor Hoy, felt very sympathetic to those who called for a trial this evening from the public forum. But the reality is that this isn't going to operate. No one's paying any fees until January of 2027. And the fees and charges, these fees and charges will be reported back to council after less than 6 months of operation, because they will have to be considered at the equivalent council meeting next year. So to all intents and purposes, I think this is a trial. There will be a review. There will be monitoring and engaging with local businesses to understand the impacts of the fees and whether they can be improved either by reduction or some other conditions on the proposed permits. So, and the other thing I would remind councillors is these are fees we're adopting. The policy itself was adopted in March following robust community consultation. And the gratifying thing in this report, in my view, is that the fees that will be collected will be internally restricted, and they must be spent on maintenance and improvement of the very open space from which they're collected. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting the motion. Do you wish a right of reply, Councillor Berricky?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor. There is a difference between something being free and free of cost. And whilst walking through the parks is free, it doesn't come at no cost. For the concern about small businesses that are operating currently, not paying any rent rates, or who are the lifeblood of North Sydney, undercutting our very own small businesses and our own ratepayers by allowing people to effectively operate a business without any cost for a site, really is undermining our own businesses itself. And I would also remind everybody that for businesses that are operating, that the fees that they do pay for use of the park is a tax deduction in the business expense. And so they will be able to take a deduction when allocating that through their business. On that basis, I move the motion.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? And those against? And that is carried. And that brings us to item 10.8, 2026 Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference, Delegates and Motions. Councillor Berricky, have you a motion?
I have a motion for number 1. The council nominate the Mayor, Councillor Baker, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Berricky, Councillor Welsh, Councillor Santa and Councillor Holding as the 5 voting delegates for the 2025 Local Government Conference in Wollongong.
Could I suggest Councillor Hoy, and we have all.
I asked Councillor Hoy.
Okay.
Is
Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Santa. And the rest is the balance of the recommendation. Is there any discussion? All those in favour? Those against? And that is carried. So that takes us to 10.10, Hume Street Park, Stage 2 and Kelly's Place Children's Centre. Councillor
Thank you, Mayor.
Holding. Sorry, Councillor Holding, you have a motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I did send it through earlier. You got it? Okay. The council receives and notes the report, and in particular notes A, that the Crows Nest St Leonard's precinct currently has a population density of 9,733 people per square kilometre, with 30% of households housing couples without children and 35% lone person households, excuse me, and the lowest ratio of open space in the North Sydney LGA at 3.42 metres squared per person. The expansion of Hume Street Park, including the demolition of the building housing Kelly's Place, has been planned for over 14 years in order to increase open space to meet existing density and planned future density of the precinct. But C, Stage 1 of the expanded Hume Street Park project, which delivered 1,200 square metres of new open space for Crow's Nest, was formally opened in February 2022. On the 20th of October 2022, the Kelly's Place Committee acknowledged the imminent need to relocate to facilitate Stage 2 of the expanded Hume Street Park, and Council subsequently extended the Kelly's Place lease over the last 4 years, whilst working with Kelly's Place management to find a relocation site. E, Council has, since at least 2019, identified numerous alternative locations, none of which have been acceptable to Kelly's Place. F, the estimated cost of effective remediation of the failed waterproofing membrane at Kelly's Place is $800,000 to $1 million. G, there is capacity and availability of childcare places, including not-for-profit centres within the Crow's Nest St Leonard's locality. H, in April 2026, Council entered into an agreement with the Department of Planning and Public Spaces to plan, construct and deliver at least 2,000 square metres of new open space in Stage 2 of Hume Street Park, funded from special infrastructure contributions collected for the purpose of delivering the expanded Hume Street Park in the Crow's Nest St Leonard's precinct. 2, that for certainty, Council confirms that A, it will not further extend the lease to Kelly's Place Children's Centre beyond 31st of December 2026. B, it does not endorse the retention of the Kelly's Place building within the design and construction of Stage 2 of Hume Street Park expansion in order to maximise larger contiguous areas of open space to support a wide range of recreational activities, gatherings and events, And C, reconfirms the Bank Street site is to continue as the base supporting over 100 North Sydney family daycare families. 3, that Council authorises the Chief Executive Officer to work with Kelly's Place Children's Centre to facilitate appropriate transition arrangements and support prior to the expiry of its lease on 31st of December 2026, including liaising with Lane Cove and Willoughby councils to support those children residing outside the North Sydney local government area. 4, that Council reconfirms that development contribution funds collected for childcare under the community facilities provision within the North Sydney Local Infrastructure Contribution Plan are allocated for the fit out of 52 McLaren Street, North Sydney, and any childcare facilities identified in the Crow's Nest Master Plan to be undertaken in the 2026-2027 delivery plan.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Santa. Do you wish to speak to your motion after you've had a sip?
Thank you. So, North City Council has financially supported and assisted Kelly's Place for decades, not because it had to, but because it was the right thing to do. And we've continued to offer support and provide as much time and assistance for relocation as Kelly's Place has allowed. We're not seeking to close Kelly's Place, but to move it. Moving is not closure. Of course, we all desire a good outcome, but the central point is that Kelly's Place leadership have been aware of the very real need to relocate their operation for more than 14 years. This isn't a rushed decision, a surprise, or a quick fix. Kelly's is, I'm certain, a fantastic daycare for both parents and children, and I hope it can continue to be so at other premises. It's very easy to get caught up in an emotional response, but we have to face reality. Like any other tenant, the council, as landlord, is not directly responsible for that business, whether it is for profit or not for profit. So as the reality of delivering Hume Street Stage 2 became ever more likely, this council ramped up efforts to help secure an alternative venue. Over the past 5 years, council staff, planners, and our CEO have held increasingly intensive discussions to find a solution that might be acceptable to Kelly's Place. That is a long time, and we have been patient. I know that all of us are enormously disappointed that no location which has been presented was deemed viable by Kelly's Place leadership, but we are at the end of the line. There is a sense that with certain of the many alternate sites, the idea of perfection got in the way of good. Other childcare centres have proceeded to move into and use locations which were passed up by Kelly's Place. And there are really good reasons to move, not least that the council building they operate in suffers from mould and is gradually rotting away. A projected investigation for repair would sit well over $2 million, including a refit. But even if that pathway was more than theoretical, Kelly's would still need to relocate for such major work to take place. And of course, added to this, North Sydney would lose 2,000 square metres of public open space. It just wouldn't be able to go ahead. The site is not so large that it can accommodate both. That would be a catastrophic failure for the people of Crow's Nest and this council. As anyone who lives or shops in St Leonard's and Crow's Nest knows, it is high density and getting higher. The need and pressure for more open space is acute. So I can't support further delay. That could jeopardise our ability to use the $9.3 million of state government money we have secured, which will design, fund and build this scarce public open space. Yes, that's right, design, fund and build. We simply can't put the 40 or so families that use Kelly's Place ahead of the needs of over 9,000 new homes in Crow's Nest and St Leonard's. These too will be filled with families and many young children. There are also the thousands of people who pass daily through Crow's Nest Metro. This vital space and connection will be a boost to all the local businesses who will benefit from better connectivity with more space to eat, chat, stroll and shop. I remain hopeful that Kelly's Place are able to secure premises outside of council-owned properties. There will be more choice and perhaps something better than we can offer. I'd encourage anyone who is seeking the facts, more detail, or has questions to read the very comprehensive report compiled by our CEO, and I ask that you support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Hoy.
Yes, I would like to move an amendment to the motion to amend, which I have already sent in. Which would be that council note the draft concept design for Hume Street Park Stage 2 is scheduled to occur between August and September 2026, followed by community consultation on concept designs, while the final design is scheduled to be completed in early 2027. And 3, to ensure all viable options are thoroughly evaluated before designs are progressed, council instructs the project design team to develop and explore design options that retain Kelly's Place Children's Centre in its current location, to be presented alongside other concepts during the public exhibition phase in late 2026, incorporating a layout that integrates the existing childcare facility footprint with contiguous public open space, and B, a staged construction methodology that allows Kelly's Place to remain safely operational or temporarily accommodated during park works.
Seconded by councillor Keane. Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yes, so this report continues what I believe to be an unfortunate and false dichotomy. It implies that we must make a choice between two community needs. We can either have public open space or we can have community childcare. At the risk of sounding too Pollyanna, I don't accept that premise. I do believe that we can have both. Hard choices are sometimes necessary, and I'm very sympathetic to both sides of this argument, but I don't accept that this is a circumstance where we are being forced to make the hard choice. In fact, we aren't even at the choice-making stage yet. We're still determining what the options in front of us actually are. True strategic planning isn't about making hard choices for the sake of it. It's about finding creative ways to make community expectations coexist. The report suggests that if we proceed with transition arrangements, that will result in the termination of the service's presence. Affected families will be absorbed by surrounding providers. It mentions that nearby centres have a strong willingness to assist. But a willingness to assist is not a guaranteed placement, and it also completely ignores the unique value of what we would be losing. And other services around our area are closing at the same time, including SDN Crow's Nest, another strong not-for-profit service. Not to mention that this does nothing for the workers who would be displaced under this plan, as was alluded to by Mr. Sage during the community forum. Kelly's Place has been a proudly community-owned not-for-profit institution serving the Crow's Nest community since 1988. As this very report acknowledges, research shows that community-managed not-for-profit childcare centres consistently achieve higher quality ratings than for-profit models. They anchor on neighbourhoods, run on volunteer parent governance, and reinvest every dollar back into children. You cannot simply replace a historic high-quality community asset with a commercial for-profit vacancy down the road and call it a win. Now, I'm rarely at the front of the queue when it comes to arguments around heritage. I feel it's often invoked inappropriately to things that real people have no relationship worth preserving with. But in Kelly's Place, I don't think that's the case. A history of care and community control is absolutely the kind of heritage and culture that I think is worth preserving, particularly at a time of immense developer-led change and development in our community. These institutions are the kind that are worth preserving. The expansion of Hume Street Park is a multi-million-dollar project designed to support an influx of thousands of new homes under the Transport-Oriented Development Program. Those new apartments are going to be filled with young families who will desperately need both a park and early learning. This report explicitly admits that finding a suitable relocation site in a hyper-dense, highly priced market like Crow's Nest is, quote, unlikely. The Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure, meanwhile, has publicly stated their support of collaboration with Council to align project planning with the considerations of Kelly's Place. The design for stage 2 hasn't even been drawn up yet. The draft concept design phase does not even begin until August. We are currently progressing along a timeline to evict a childcare centre to make way for a design that is currently a blank piece of paper. I believe there surely has to be a better way.
Thank you. And councillor Keane.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hoy, for bringing this motion to the table. We're all looking to find a solution, and I think incorporating the facility into the park is actually a really good solution. And to your point, the designs haven't even been made. We need to think about this from the emotional connection that we've seen with all our families who've been here multiple meetings to advocate on behalf of Kelly's Place. You've got to think about the 2-year-olds that met in early childcare and what we're suggesting that you evict them out of the facility, and then what, they go to different childcares. They're not going to understand that. These children have made friends for life. We really want to make sure that we can still provide that facility for them and provide, you know, the structure and safety for them to go to preschool. You have working parents. It's hard to find long daycare. Most of these children probably started when they were babies. So it's really hard to then go and say, all right, we'll find another daycare, which is another one's closing. And then you've got all these working parents who have now got no solution potentially in December. I think as a council, we owe it to Kelly's Place, 40 years of service, outstanding credibility, and families who just want a solution for their children. So I thank Councillor Hoy for bringing this solution to the table, because we all want to help Kelly's Place. And if it is incorporating them into the design, then that's a great solution.
Thank you. Could you turn off your Councillor Spencerley?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to echo thanks to Councillor Hoy for what was very clear and clarified position. There is very few people who want to facilitate the end of Kelly's Place, but by not voting for this motion, you are facilitating the end of Kelly's Place. The state government has said that they do not want to see a solution that evicts a 40-year childcare facility. Many of the councillors around this table have said the same. There is a very few minority that want the path, or an easy path, to producing a public open space to not have a childcare facility in the way. And I think that is just destructive for the community and destructive for our reputation as a council, and more importantly, destructive to the people involved with, and the people who go to, and the children that go to Kelly's Place. There is a simple solution. It doesn't have to be childcare or open space. This project, especially with the support of the New South Wales Government and planning, can integrate a childcare facility into the design. By doing so, we keep the tradition of community-run childcare alive and supported. It is our responsibility. We are the arbitrating decision makers today on whether or not Kelly's Place can survive. So please, when we consider this motion, consider whether we want to be on the side of community childcare, or we want to be on the side of creating more demand for the commercial operators, for separating, you know, children and parents and the friendship groups that are created, and for destroying a 40-year heritage that has been built on by support and by the public. Studies show that where there is a community-run facility, prices of the surrounding commercial services are lower. So it is not as simple as saying we can facilitate the movement of these children to new facilities, to new commercial facilities. That, of course, they're going to accept the children. And of course, with the reduced capacity, they're going to increase prices. So we are yet again, as a council, contributing to an increase in cost of living. We need to support community-run facilities. They are the last bastion of community organisations that haven't been privatised. And we have one of the shining examples here, one incredible support base. You can see from every time we've had an open gallery, the amount of love and support. We cannot, as a council, be directly, and let's not mince words here, we are directly responsible for what happens to Kelly's Place. No amount of 30-page reports, no amount of Councillor Holding telling us how we would love to keep it open, but the time has come. Let us be completely clear on this matter. It is our decision tonight whether we want to find a solution that incorporates public open space and community-run childcare, that incorporates new opportunities for people walking through the metro, but it also respects the 40 years of hard work, tradition, love and support of kids that have gone through a facility, and we keep that alive for another 40 years. That is the decision we have amongst us tonight, and I encourage all of the councillors, do not be responsible for closing, and do not be directly responsible for closing this childcare facility down. Let us work with New South Wales Government, work with Kelly's Place, and find a solution. The decision is ours. Let's make the right choice.
Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to say thank you to Councillor Hoy for putting forward this revised motion, which I support fully. And I also support James's, Councillor Spencerley's comments that the decision is in our hands. And I don't think we should be trading green space for a childcare centre, which is valued, which is run really, really well. It provides that required infrastructure for the Crow's Nest area. We heard from many parents from Kelly's Place. They're also willing to look into relocation into another building, and there is a possibility, so that should be also considered, and not close the childcare centre. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Berrigy.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be speaking against the amendment and for the motion. As a parent, I had 3 children go through many long daycare centres and childcare institutions. Yes, you form an attachment with them, but because my children didn't go to Kelly's Place, I don't think that they didn't have excellent early childhood education. I want to take a few minutes to step back, though, from the emotion. As we have to make decisions based on evidence, long-term urban planning, and a consistent application of public policy. Lately, we have been under a lot of discussion, both in the chamber and from our 2 state members, about this decision-making. However, if we look closely at how identical issues have been handled in our neighbouring electorates, it becomes clear that the criticism levelled at this council lacks consistent foundation, and I believe our community deserves conversations based on facts, not on shifting standards. To understand why our current approach is both responsible and standard, we only have to look at the recent history of our neighbouring local governments. In the Mosman electorate in June 2018, Mosman Council made the decision not to renew the lease for Pippi's at Balmoral, transitioning the site back to public green space and broader community facilities. And then just 18 months later, in December 2019, they closed the Mosman Occasional Childcare Centre to allow for a major sports and community pavilion upgrade at the Allan Border Oval. In both instances, families faced difficult transitions. Yet, the member for North Shore rightly respected the local council's jurisdiction to manage its own infrastructure priorities and didn't intervene, and the council stepped in and assisted with the transition for families to other providers, with the operator of Pippi's saying that it was fortunate that such excellent childcare was available locally. And we see a similar story in the Willoughby electorate, where in December 2025, Willoughby Council ended a 44-year lease for KU Chatswood. That decision was driven by long-term financial sustainability and asset management to reduce ratepayer subsidies. The response from their member for Willoughby was measured. He acknowledged the closure was regrettable, attended the farewell event, cut the cake, and commended staff for their decades of service. There were no aggressive public campaigns or political demands directed at that council management. Yet here in North Sydney, where we seek to expand much-needed parkland for a growing high-density population that has been planned for years and years and consulted with the community, the operational standard suddenly changes. We face this level of external scrutiny that was entirely absent during those undertaken by our neighbours. As a councillor, my focus remains on the data. The narrative being presented is that moving Kelly's Place will leave local families stranded and without options. But a local audit says that there are childcare centres places available, as well as in Mosman and in Willoughby. Unlike other regions facing genuine infrastructure deficits, our surrounding commercial and corporate providers do have immediate vacancies. These do not just meet basic requirements, but also exceed the national quality standard, as Kelly's Place does. We are not leaving families without care. We are looking at a market that has more than enough high quality existing capacity to safely absorb care for these children, and we have allocated funds to a new childcare facility at 52 McLaren Street. I value the history of Kelly's Place, and I understand the deep emotional connection that all families have to community-run centres. But as custodians of public land, we cannot manage a city based on sentiment alone, nor can we allow external political pressure to derail balanced, planned urban planning. Mosman Council chose green place and sporting infrastructure. Willoughby Council chose asset sustainability. North Sydney Council is looking to deliver vital, non-negotiable open space for our significant community that is only getting larger. and we are fully aware that excellent compliant childcare alternatives exist right down the road. And whilst again, I understand the emotional attachment to childcare, there is childcare available, but precious open space is just not. I would like to proceed with this park expansion calmly and rationally, and with a firm commitment from the council to help families transition smoothly and to continue to assist Kelly's Place look for an alternative location.
Are there any other speakers on the amendment? I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour? And those against? And that is lost. That takes us to the original motion.
Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment, if I may.
Put the amendment.
Thank you. It's been emailed through to governance. The amendment is so replaces the recommendation is that council receive the report and note that there are available funds in council's restricted childcare and community facilities developer contribution reserves, which could be applied to providing capital works towards a suitable property for Kelly's Place. To New South Wales Planning Guidance recognises forward funding and pooling of contribution funds, including pooling contribution within and between plans to fund higher priority infrastructure earlier. That council conditionally allocate up to 2.5 million from the C1 childcare developer contributions reserve to support eligible one-off capital works to secure, construct, adapt or fit out council-owned or council-controlled premises for use by Kelly's Place Children's Centre as a childcare community facility on the basis, and this is on the basis that a suitable property is identified and that the proposed works are eligible under the Local Infrastructure Contributions Plan 2020. The council, last point, the council urgently work with Kelly's Place to provide a further report to council as soon as possible, practically possible, confirming any suitable property options, the proposed works, the approval pathway, and the timing.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Keane. Councillor Spencer, I think you've just spoken. Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
I didn't speak. I mean, I just read out the motion as Councillor Holding did as well. Yes, I'd like to speak to the motion. Thanks. Look, I think the original report, which we're acknowledging as part of this motion, was a large book of works that certainly highlighted the incredible work that's been done in the past. I think there's probably 30 pages of justification for how much effort council has put into saving Kelly's Place, finding alternatives for Kelly's Place. The report does read as a foregone conclusion, as does Councillor Holding's original motion. And, you know, one would say is this, the perfect time for the Shakespeare quote is one does protest too much. If we spend 30 pages talking about all of the great work that we've done trying to save Kelly's Place, but now that we have potential avenue for funding, now that we have potentially and have looked into options for facilities that council own, there is very little to no content there on how council may actually assist and provide funds and locations to assist. Previous action does not absolve us of today's requirement to make a decision. Previous action is fantastic, but previous action only shows what's been done. What Kelly's Place needs today is what is going to be done. If you look at the incredible community support, we are talking about building community space for people to walk through, for people to have lunch in, but the community itself spoken. The community would prefer not to lose the community childcare centres at the expense of open space. But we don't have to choose one or the other. We can today allocate some funds on the basis that a suitable facility is found, and we can move Kelly's Place. We don't have to say it's one or the other. All we are voting on today in this amendment is the conditional allocation of $2.5 million. Absolutely nothing more. So, you know, one of the points I made earlier, I won't speak to again, is the value of community childcare. I will highlight that pricing is cheaper for commercial activities when there is a community childcare located in the vicinity. So not only are we moving people out to commercial facilities, we will be increasing the cost. I find it disingenuous to suggest that we need this open space because of the incredible demand and growth in inhabitants, for the area in apartments, and that itself won't bring demand for childcare. So the fact that there are some places today that can take the demand from commercial operators who are probably rubbing their hands together does not mean that as the area grows, we won't absolutely need and increased childcare facilities. So don't just believe the version of the world that there are places available, that this is solved, that there's no impact to the community. There is long-term impact to the community. Just as we require a long-term open space, we require a huge increase in community, or not just community, but in childcare facilities. The department, we often have heard in these debates that it's the department driving the timing, that we put the funding at risk if we don't, evict Kelly's Place on December 31st. Well, meetings we've had with the department show that that is not the case. They are absolutely open. In fact, more than open, they would prefer, and I believe that they will help to find a solution for Kelly's Place, if that is in timing or if that is in, some alteration of the design. Then we heard that funding is the problem. The May meeting, we heard councillors talk about, look, there's no funding. We'd love to support Kelly's Place in a migration, but there's no funding. I think it was Councillor Berrigan asked me, where's the money coming from, Councillor Spenceley? Well, Councillor Berrigan, I'm delighted to say we've found it. We've found there is absolutely funds in the restricted reserves that we can use to allow us to continue to operate and to increase childcare facilities. We've had lawyers look at this, and it is legal, and the report has come back stating exactly that. So we've ticked off another one of the issues. Now it's location, and the fact that Kelly's Place has turned down locations in the past. Well, that doesn't mean that we have to live by that decision forever. Let us now take the conditional funding, know that we have the support there in a monetary sense, and look towards the location as the next problem. It is effectively voting for, it is not effectively, it is voting for the closure of Kelly's Place if we say that we have to have a perfect solution with a facility, with funding, everything here at this meeting. What we do need to do is we need to chip off each issue as and when they come up. Funding is solved. We can allocate the funding. It does meet the criteria, and it doesn't just create places in the future sometime before 2036. It creates places today, places that are needed. And we're not allocating that unconditionally. We're not allocating it based on...
Thank you, Councillor Spenceley. That's the end of your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could just one sum up with the quote from Joni Mitchell, which I'd love to give in there.
No, thank you, Councillor Spenceley. Thank you, Councillor Spenceley. Is there anyone else speaking to Councillor Spenceley's amendment? No, I'll put Councillor Spenceley's amendment. All those in favour? Those against? And that is lost. That brings us back to the original motion. Are there any further speakers on the original motion? Before I give Councillor Holding his right of reply, I will speak to this motion. And first of all, I'll start with some facts. There was a suggestion that there's no clear plan or consultation on what the park at Stage 2 of Hume Street Plaza will look like, and that's not true. There was a concept plan adopted by Council in 2015, and there is currently a pre-design consultation on exhibition now. That's the first of 2 consultations. The second will be the post-design consultation with the final design. That is how community consultation in strategic planning when it comes to implementation works. The idea that the state government is open to integration of the council's ageing holding into the design is really an exaggeration. There was a meeting at which a Deputy Chief of Staff to the Minister suggested that there had to be a solution. The solution that I keep hearing is somehow that it's Bank Street suddenly. Well, Bank Street was rejected by this council in November of 2025 because it is not viable. Not only does it currently house the base for more than 100 families for family daycare, all of whom are local residents and who are amongst the lowest socioeconomic band in our community. It is located in a cul-de-sac, a residential cul-de-sac, The traffic generation alone for a 40+ childcare centre space would mean that it would be refused if there were any development application. It would cost a minimum of 2 million or more to upgrade an existing facility. And those contributions that Councillor Spencerley has referred to have been earmarked for the fit out of a larger community childcare space at 52 McLaren, as well as the community childcare facilities that will be identified in the Crow's Nest Master Plan that the Council is undertaking in this financial year. What I will say is there is excellent childcare available in Crow's Nest. What we know that there is a dearth of is public open space. And it is a terrible thing that as a council that we have to be considering the balancing 40 childcare spaces against the needs of tens of thousands of people who currently live in Crow's Nest and will be moving there. It's really striking to me that we've heard from families who don't live in the local North Sydney local government area, but who we haven't heard from in this debate are the voices of those who live in Crow's Nest now, or when we talk about intergenerational equity, will be coming to Crow's Nest to live there. And what we do know is that that's a population of 29,000 people by 2036. And even with stage 2 of Hume Street Park, the open space deficit will not touch the sides of the needs. This isn't some pretty plaza to walk through on your way to and from the metro. This is a place where you can bring your dog from your apartment to have a pee. This is the place where you can throw a ball. This is a place where you can sit under a tree and read a book because you do not have those facilities available in the density that is there and is coming. Crow's Nest has waited a very, very long time for this small amount of additional open space. In 2008, the Council's open space study recognised that it was a red alert situation for Crow's Nest. That was before the density that we're talking about now. By 2012, the population was 12,000 in Crow's Nest. That we've well and truly surpassed that. In 2015, after nearly 1,000 people were involved in the community consultation on the precinct 1, 2 and 3 planning studies, that those concept plans were adopted. This is, to me, something that has to be said about Kelly's Place. Kelly's Place has been on notice for 14 years. Its lease has had demolition clauses in it for 10 years. And yet what's been happening in those 10 years is that more people live in Crow's Nest, and there is the most that we've been able to deliver is 1,200 square metres of open space. And as I've said, and I will say over and again, it does not touch the sides. You know, we were at an Australian Local Government Association conference in Canberra last week, and the same message is being heard all around the country, which is housing should not be built without community infrastructure to accompany it. And yet this is an example of a council who identified development pressure in 2012 and started to plan for and deliver on the vital community infrastructure, which is open space. Now, I could quote from the value of open space and the value of a canopy to wellbeing and community wellbeing, but we don't need to do that. And we can talk about how long it takes to deliver a single park, because it took 11 years for the first stage of Hume Street Park to be delivered. And you're right, the council is driving these timelines because it's almost too late for the people who live there now. This park at 3,000 square metres, which is what it ultimately will be, will serve a community that is vastly, vastly underserved by canopy and open space. It is also about intergenerational equity, this careful long-term planning for Crow's Nest and St Leonard's. It's about delivering something decent to the children who will be living there in 10, 15, 20, 40, 80 years from now. And that is to have a public heart of Crow's Nest. The reality is that it should have been delivered, stage 2, at the time that the metro was. There's an acknowledgement, as Councillor Holding notes, by the committee of Kelly's Place, that they understood it was imminent in 2021, and the council has been extending and bending over backwards to find locations for Kelly's Place. There are other voices that aren't here tonight. For example, a resident wrote to me and said that there are ample childcare vacancies in the Crows Nest St Leonard's areas. The fact of these vacancies in the local area is pertinent when it's realised that some of the objections of Kelly's Place to some of the alternative sites suggested over the years were rejected because the locations were not as geographically convenient as Crows Nest. The other fact of that is the requirements that Kelly's Place has put forward are unreasonable. 450 square metres of both inside and outside space in Crows Nest is impossible, and that's why the council has been unable to find a new location, and why Kelly's Place itself has not been able to put something on the table. Most homes in Crows Nest are built on blocks of land that are much smaller than 450 square metres, and that's why we haven't seen compromise on the part of Kelly's Place. But what I would say is way more important than that is that there are people who need that open space now, and we as a council are being asked, I think, a really important question, which is to balance the needs of a few against those of the many and the broader public interest. And, you know, leadership is not measured by how easy the journey to the decision is, but by whether we stay the course and deliver on our commitments. And the thing is, this council, in hand with the broader community, has made that commitment to deliver this park. And it's a park that doesn't have a childcare centre in the middle of it, because the community commitment was that it would be as much contiguous open space as was possible in a constrained, as Councillor Hoy said, hyper-dense location, and getting denser. There are always moments of pressure, moments when the course is challenged by the loudest critics, moments when it would be easier to return to the status quo or defer, delay or dilute the original commitment. However, when the outcome is in the long-term interests of our community, our responsibility is to stand steady and to work to deliver it. So for all of those reasons, I will be supporting this motion. I think certainty is important for those who may need to make arrangements, but the reality is that the commitment to stand to continue to work with Kelly's Place will continue. And if there is finally energy put into finding a location, then no doubt that will have to be on the table. But so far, I've seen more lobbying and social media activity than any attempt to find a compromise position for a location within the North Sydney local government area. And the reality is that the driver of this park has always been about providing open space to the people who live in Crows Nest. And that's the reason that I'm supporting the motion. Councillor Holding, do you wish a right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, look, I think you've made an excellent number of points. One that I'd like to back up is that in July 2020, when Kelly's Place were looking at 52 McLaren Street, which they later rejected, we got some sense of the kind of space that they were looking for. And as the Mayor referenced, it was 450 square metres of outdoor space with sunlight and trees and deep soil, and 450 square metres of indoor space. That's 900 square metres. I'm not as good at maths as Councillor Berrigan is, but we're looking, the Hume Street Stage 2 is 2,000 square metres. So for the councillors are saying that we can combine this space, the Kelly's Place would be taking up, on their metric, nearly 1,000 square metres of that 2,000 square metres. And for those that would argue that that outside space could be shared with the community, that's simply not true, because with working with children checks, you can't have the general public wandering across the 450 square metres of outside space dedicated for Kelly's Place. So for these very practical reasons, you can't combine the two things in the one spot. It's an absolute misnomer. And to talk about the community as well, I attended Wollstonecraft Precinct, as did Councillor Santa, Berrigie and the Mayor. And Kelly's Place had written to the precinct, and the chair of the precinct wrote them a letter back. I won't read you all of it, but it's tantamount to the fact that Wollstonecraft Precinct, which is one of the closest precincts to this place, do not support Kelly's Place staying there. It has never been council's role to fund the relocation of Kelly's Place, nor was there an obligation to find an alternative location, although council has over the years offered up many locations. Council, though, provided a low rental. I followed this situation over the years and now understand that all the many premises offered to you were rejected. My understanding is that council is not aware of any other sites that were located and considered by you. I can carry on, but you get the gist. Wollstonecraft Precinct do not support Kelly's Place remaining there. I commend the motion to you.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? And those against? And the motion is carried. So that now takes us to 11.1, notice of motion, Kelly's Place, councillors Dempsey and Keane. The fact of that motion now is otiose because the information that you're seeking and the other parts of the motion are contrary to, well, the information sought was in the report, and the rest of the position is otiose as it's been contrary to the motion that was just made by the council. So we'll move to 11.2. Notice of motion 5 of 26, recommendation to state government bodies to improve accessibility and inclusion. Councillor Berrigie.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move the motion.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I will just briefly speak to this motion, which was discussed at the Access and Inclusion Committee. It is astonishing to think that the Transport for New South Wales nor do Standards Australia actually have an Access and Inclusion Committee to learn from the lived experience of people who live with disabilities. And I think that they should. And if Councillor Santor is willing to take on a number 2, which I had on the other page, that council offer the services of its Access and Inclusion Committee to both Transport for New South Wales and to Standards Australia until such time that they appoint their own committees.
Would you take that on?
Yes.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Hoy.
Thank you for adding that second bit. I thought the first one was short and sweet, like my good self. But yes, I would like to strongly endorse this recommendation to the government, calling on them to form access and inclusion committees because they sure need them. In particular, Transport for New South Wales, where disability access is permanently relegated to the too hard basket and nice to have rather than essential features, which it so clearly is. You have to look at the most recent New South Wales budget and you'll see that there is no new investment in speeding up our progress on making our public transport system independently accessible for people with disability. Last year in March, Transport for New South Wales confirmed that on our current trajectory, it will take at least another 47 years until all New South Wales train stations are fully accessible, with 100 stations at the time still not independently accessible. Over a year later, and we're still in the exact same position with no new funding to fast-track accessibility upgrades, and our current plan still moving at a snail's pace. There was also no new investment in wheelchair-accessible taxis, despite the fact that we were promised longer-term reforms, including sustainable funding over a year and a half ago, when the government announced its so-called emergency funding package of $15 million. The Disability Royal Commission made it abundantly clear that people with disability continue to experience exclusion, violence, abuse, neglect, and poorer life outcomes because mainstream systems, including our health, housing, education, employment, transport, and justice systems, do not meet their needs. We know exactly what is needed to make these systems accessible, inclusive, and safe for every single person with a disability in our community. We just need a government with the courage to do it. And a good start would be to open themselves up for feedback and to really listen to the disability community about the things that matter and are important to them.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? And those against, and that is carried. That's to you again, Councillor Berrigie, the notice of motion on Miyazaki Forest.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll move the motion.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Holding.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just briefly speak to it as we have been discussing the lack of open space and tree canopy and everything environmental at this meeting. we have multiple parts of little pockets of land. And it would be lovely to see whether we could get Transport for New South Wales as part of their funding back for the 3,000 trees and all the open space that they have taken, whether they might be able to provide project funding so that we might be able to activate these spaces.
Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to second this motion. I've been to Japan quite a few times, and I've seen the wonderful things that they've done in the tiny little spaces that they have available in Tokyo and Osaka. And I think to adopt that system for here, where we have a similar need, is going to be outstanding. I would love to see it accompanying things like getting rid of grass on verges of nature strips and turning them into little mini parks as well. I think there are so many places, little spots available in our North Sydney LGA that we could use for this purpose. And I thank Councillor Beregi for introducing such a great motion.
Thank you. Councillor Holding.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, when I first read this motion from Councillor Beregi, I was delighted. This sort of on the hoof kind of policy where we can take the trees that were owed from one place and put them in another, as the state returns some of those little pockets to us and put trees on them, I think is a terrific idea. And it's the green shoots of recovery. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Before I hand back to Councillor Beregi, I'm just going to say that Councillor Walsh and I attended the most recent NESROC, Northern Sydney Regional Organisation of Council meetings at Ku-ring-gai, and they gave a presentation on their tiny forest project. And not only does it build canopy and biodiversity and habitat because of the special way that these trees and understory are planted, it also had a social inclusion and a social benefit, and that was that people they engaged volunteers to do the planting, and they found that people are coming back weekly to visit the trees. The special fungi and compost enrichment of the soil meant that they had a control tennis court size planting, and the tiny forest was 2 to 3 times the size in the 12-month period. So the interesting thing to me is that there is a potential not only for planting of forests on Transport for New South Wales owned land that might be in our care and control, but I think it also helps quarantine that land from further Transport for New South Wales destruction when we have some forests on it. So I too support the motion. Councillor Beregi.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess I'd just like to add that if anybody else, either here or our residents, have any other space that they can identify that might be suitable, please don't hesitate to let us know.
I put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. 11.4 is now OTOs because resolution of item 10.1 included design and consultation. So that takes us to 11.5, notice of motion 8 of 26, resident access and parking support for North Sydney Olympic Pool. Councillor Keane, do you wish to move that? Yeah. Moved by Councillor Keane, seconded by Councillor Carr. Councillor Keane, you have the floor.
Thank you. Look, we just brought this forward to find a solution for the residents for the pool. What we're suggesting is it's like a parking pass program where North Sydney residents can buy a certain number of parking passes for a certain nominal fee, and that means they can park on the streets of North Sydney. So it's a concept very similar to that, where every North Sydney resident would be eligible, say, for example, 20 passes where they could pay a nominal fee, say $2 each, and then they can access the pool. So it's coming from that element to provide the residents with some element of resident concession. And then we've also got the parking arrangement that was previously installed for the pool, which we would also like to see that come back in its previous format.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you to the comments made on the motion. I would like to add, I guess, that our motion doesn't necessarily prescribe 20 passes a year. It could be less than that, but it will be an offer to the residents who are now having to pay 52% rate rise, primarily because of the pool, to be given some access at a low price. It's not subsidizing the price forever. It is only some form of gesture from us that we recognize their investment in the pool. The other thing I would say is regarding the parking, other pools have been mentioned, and I'd like to say that Lane Cove Council pool, they provide free parking. Willoughby Council pool provides free parking. The City of Sydney, at least one of the pools has free parking, and I think the other two have discounted parking. The Warringah Aquatic Park has free parking, and the Manly Andrew Bay has free parking. So I think it's important to provide some sort of parking relief for the residents, because yes, there are residents that can access the pool using public transport, but then there are other residents who will have to drive because there is no public transport available. Or if there is public transport available that can make it work, it'll take them a very long time to get to the pool. And we're all busy people, and I don't know whether we can afford to have, spent 3 hours traveling to swimming and coming back home. So I think it's important to provide some sort of parking facility for the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Berricky.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just speak against this motion. We're hearing about it time and time again. The response from the Director of Open Space and Infrastructure, thank you, says that Council has investigated this on numerous occasions. The pool is in the location that it is in. Yes, there's limited parking. I think we knew that, or that was known when the people who designed the pool and didn't do anything about any parking. There is available parking that you don't have to pay for at certain times around the pool, but it's at odds with having the pool and a green travel scheme, where actually there is public transport. There's train stations up the road, the buses come around the corner, and we really are just moving money around somehow. If you make resident access and you offer parking support, you're undermining the very viability and financial premises that the pool is based on. And this is just really a continuation of a request by councillors Keane and Carr to continue to undermine the pool, which is really sad, because the pool's about to open in 7th of August, and no matter what we all think, I think we all just want it open happily, and make sure that our community have a fantastic experience from that date forward.
Are there any other speakers? If they're not, before I give Councillor Keane her right of reply, I'm going to speak briefly against this motion. I mean, this is the third time that we've considered this, the 9th of February and the 13th of April. That's certainly documented in the response from Director of Open Space and Infrastructure. What's way more disappointing, but probably unsurprising, is that the two Liberal councillors are suggesting that we subsidise with existing council revenue users of the pool that at least one of them voted more than 23 times for to be this bloated vanity project that ended up being the very reason why we're having to undertake such careful financial repair. There's a reason, Councillor Carr, that we sought a rate increase, and it wasn't to spend it and splash it on trivial things. It was to start to do the financial repair and address the asset backlog that is in large part, as you admitted, due to the reckless North Sydney Olympic Pool project. So it's particularly galling that this populist ad hoc motion is coming from those who in large part are responsible for where we are. The idea that Lane Cove has free parking, well, yeah, they built a car park when they did their pool. The City of Sydney, I'm a swimmer there, they don't subsidise their parking, and not all of their pools have it. You know, and the reality is, why would we be comparing ourselves to the city in New South Wales that is the most cashed up of any other and has enormous resources to be able to subsidise residents? The fact is that the much vaunted park and swim that existed in more than a decade ago, when the pool hadn't even thought of a development, wasn't a huge subsidy, and it wasn't hugely taken up. The reality is, as Councillor Berricky said, this is in the most iconic location in the country. It has buses that stop outside the door. It is within a 2-minute walk of Milsons Point railway station, and it now has one of the best cycling pieces of cycling infrastructure in the Sydney Harbour Bridge cycleway of anywhere else in Sydney. So for all those reasons, I will be opposing the motion. Councillor Keane, you have your right of reply.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, I'm astounded actually just to hear your response, because at the end of the day, the current SRV was not attached to the pool, and that's what all the papers said. So we did this out of the goodness. We're looking forward. I think Councillor Spenceley said this before. Everything's been looking backwards, looking in the retrospect. We're looking forward. We're looking forward to the pool opening, and we're just trying to find a way to say thank you to the residents. It wasn't going to be a massive expense. It was even a short-term option. It was just to consider something for the residents. And seriously, this council, I'm really starting to consider, because where's the heart, the soul? We've just seen it with Kelly's Place. Why can't we give the residents back something? I just don't understand it.
Put the motion. All those in favour? And those against? And that is lost. And that brings us to the close of the meeting. Thank you all for your participation. The meeting is closed.